All right, the video started. Yes. So as far I haven't seen it go in.
Well, but that's something process in terms of, so.
Yep, I'm seeing it. No, I'm seeing your screen. This is the Frisco Town Council meeting will begin at 4 p.m. You can actually scroll it up a little bit so that it's better, easy to see, or change the ratio to like 40% or something. You know what I'm saying? It's taking me a second. There we go. Yeah, now it's where it needs to be. Okay, so Zoom looks like it's right. Yep. The screen. Go back to the video camera, make sure it's pinned so that it's the one that's popping up, okay? Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and FYI, it's very possible this meeting is going to crash and burn for lack of a quorum. So I don't know. We may be done fast. I'm not sure. Enough elected officials to actually have a meeting.
So he might be jumping in his grasshopper now.
Quietly.
Right now, I'm looking at your YouTube. So you want it to be on your Zoom.
If you guys tip the maitre d better, you can get closer to the front row.
What's that?
You tip the maitre d better, you can get closer to the front row.
Oh, no.
gonna get going right at 4. And for the record, Dan Fallon, and I'll be running this evening's work session and meeting in the absence of Mayor Hunter Mortensen and Mayor Pro Tem Jesse Burley. So it's 4 right now. We're going to get going, and I want to welcome everyone to today's work session meeting of Frisco Town Council. And we're going to call this July 13th work session of the Frisco Town Council to order. Just
This. To hear yourself again.
The echo chamber. Very odd.
Let me try this. This helps.
Right. And we'll ask the clerk to take the roll right now, please.
Mortensen, absent. Aronson. Burley. Absent. Fallon.
Here.
Held.
Here.
Incan. Absent. Sherburne. Thank you.
And at this time, we would ask if there's anybody, staff or anybody on council that has any revisions to today's agenda.
I'm so sorry.
All you have to do is show up. I know.
This way.
Right. I would like to note for the record that if there's nothing, I'm not hearing anything. I would add that for the record, that we have added to tonight's agenda the contract for the new town manager. That's been added as the first agenda item of new business. It was published on Friday. It's been on the town website. And it appears no motion is necessary since this has been published. Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda with the additions? Approve contract for the new town manager. The addition of the contract's been added and moved. Is there a second?
I just want to, you're just adding the agenda item, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I second that.
So Councilmember Andy Held moved to approve the agenda and was seconded by Andrew Aronson. And Deb, if you could take the roll.
Mortensen, absent. Aronson.
Yes.
Burley, absent. Fallon.
Yes.
Held.
Yes.
Incan, absent. Sherburne. Thank you.
And that motion is carried. We'll move forward now into the first agenda item on the work session. And that is the Adventure Park, up the Peninsula Recreation Area, the building update. And I think Katie is here to do that first half. And Katie. What is yours?
Sorry. Thanks for having us. It's very exciting. This is my first in-person meeting in so long, so it's a little weird. So kind of to recap where we left this off in May, I think the last time we met to review the first round of drawings. Since that discussion, we've had some good meetings with some of you here. We've had good meetings internally as a team and with the design team, and we've really looked at the layout of this building, the function of this building, and how it will be used today and into the future. And so today we're going to present our next round of design and planning for this building, particularly at the PRA. Mr. McDonald and his team here are going to kind of go through site plans, layouts, and those activities. And we look forward to any discussion regarding this building and the future of the building. So we look forward to talking about it a little bit more. I think Megan's gonna go first. I'm also a little awkward at being in person again. I wasn't sure if I could stay seated or if I should stand. So I chose to stand. I wanted to start off just by thanking council members for your time today. We really appreciate all the feedback that we heard last time. And we feel we have a lot to share with you since then. What we did is we kind of took a step back, took a good relationship at the buildings and the space between the buildings and how they all function together. Because we realized we can't zero in on this new building without talking a little bit more about what functions are served in the Nordic Center and the Day Lodge. So that's some of the things I'm going to be reviewing. I'm with Norris Design. My name is Megan Teston, and I'm part of the team here with Bob McDonald from OLC. And Bob will talk more about the architecture, but I'm just going to try to address some of the overall site issues. I believe, do I share the screen from here?
You ready to? Yes.
I think so. Here we go. Okay. Looks like everyone can see that. This was also included in your package. But again, like I said, we're just going to talk about the relationships of the buildings and the relationships between the buildings. When we started to look at this in more detail, we realized that the buildings function very differently in the summer than in the winter. So what I'm going to present today are an overlay of summer uses, and then we'll move on to an overlay of winter uses. With that said, we did a high level kind of overview of what is being housed currently in the Day Lodge and what would then be housed in this, what we're calling the slope side hall. And then also what would be housed in the Nordic Center. So with that said, we're assuming that an elevator and an expanded food and beverage would be in addition to the Day Lodge. That would kind of help with the function and make the basement storage area better there. So weddings, rentals, conferences, retail, food and beverage, and guest service offices is what would be hosted out of the Day Lodge. And then the slope side hall would take over Fun Club. It would also have 3 community rooms. There would be office space and storage there, as well as additional restrooms and a changing space. And then over across the street at the Nordic Center would be additional youth camp space as well. We did have, as you're looking at the circulation between the buildings, we have a traffic engineer on our team. We had them come out to the site and we had them analyze some of this traffic circulation patterns, and he recommended an access point directly across from the existing access point just to the east of the Nordic Center, where the large parking lot is and kind of the ball fields on the other side, or the sleigh rides in the winter. So we would have an emergency access to the building, to Slopeside Hall on that side. And in the summer, there'd also be some type of drop-off area. One of the big changes you'll see here is that we did actually remove the tubing storage from Slopeside Hall. The tubing storage can be housed more efficiently in a nicely fenced and screened area off to the side, something that's aesthetically pleasing, but would also still house the tube storage. So that's kind of the goal, is to get that out of this building and let this building address the community more and Fun Club and rental space. Now, the other thing I really wanted to focus on is sort of this connection between Slopeside Hall and the Day Lodge. There's a really nice synergy that we can create in terms of a gathering space in these areas, and just to really look at how that space can function for the Day Lodge or for Slopeside Hall or for really large events, both of them. So it's something that we want to feel comfortable at all times of the year. I'm going to switch to the winter one. So in the winter, the Nordic Center, of course, will still house Nordic programming. And in the winter, all the tubing and the ski hill rental areas and everything that kind of goes with that will be functioning out of the Day Lodge. Currently, when people, especially tubers, come to the Day Lodge, they filter through, they go to the yurt, which you'll see is slightly relocated here. They'll pick up their tube and they'll head over to the east or uphill towards the Magic Carpet, which you'll see just on the tail end of it, just on the very far side of the screen. So that will still stay the same, just kind of that circulation pattern of coming through the Day Lodge to the yurt, to the tubing hill. What we think would be really impressive in the winter would be to have more community space for rent. And for additional meetings with the 3 rooms, they're kind of expandable. I'll let Bob get into that a little bit more. And then in the winter, we feel that the access would be simply emergency access as required by the fire department. We did have a meeting specifically with Kim McDonald to discuss this and to review that this access would work for him. So he is aware of it and he is in favor of it. And just in terms of the site design, we also want to make sure that we have a safe pedestrian connection between the Nordic Center and the new building spaces. The other thing I wanted to just touch on really quick for our knowledge is we understand that the Village Center, which is what we were calling it before, was probably not the most appropriate name. We went through a small naming exercise, something just really high level, to come up with a few different names. And what we've decided to go with for right now is Slopeside Hall. We feel that the hall has the community feel that we wanted, and Slopeside does kind of describe its location at the toe of the tubing and skiing hill. So that is what I'm going to share, and I will let Bob get into more details with the architecture.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, I'm Bob McDonald with OLC Architects. And so we're the architect of record on the project. I'm going to, let's see, can I escape? Yeah, okay. And then I'll just open up the drive. There we go. And I think it's this one. Okay, there we go. All right, and then how did you get that presentation? Control. Display. How did you find that? Sorry. Not used to.
Okay.
Just about
Well,
long
yeah,
enough,
I
we
was
can
gonna
see.
let that go.
All right, sorry about that. At least close that part. Okay, so this is just the architectural site plan that is similar to what Megan just showed you very diagrammatically. And if I can, these, I want to remind everyone too that this is still our conceptual design. So we're going to be doing a lot of study of the site and the circulation and figuring out exactly how wide some of these driveways are and what the surfacing will be and stuff like that. So this is still very high level. You can see we've got the access here, a line that that Megan was talking about, mainly for emergency access with the turnaround here. And one of the comments that we heard the last time we met with you was, well, it seems like you're just dropping people off at the backside of the building and not really, having an identified place to go. And so we've redesigned this building quite a bit in response to that comment, as well as some of the other comments that were made about the building design itself. So I'm going to advance now to the first floor plan of the building. So recognizing that we do have this drop off here that would be facing roughly east or southeast, and creating another entry or access into the building on that corner, and then creating this interior connection out to this other, which would still be the main entry that's off of the central plaza. It gave us a lot of advantages in terms of just, people circulating, getting to the building and into their destination. Another thing it afforded us was just an ability for staff to access the building through a door that does not take them right through the main lobby. They're coming in and out of this building to take their breaks and stuff like that. So giving them a quick access in here, and then a stairwell that goes quickly upstairs to the break room. was another advantage. But you can see the programmatic elements on this level are mainly these three large community classrooms. And each is sized for approximately 20 to 25 students. So the entire capacity here would be about 70 to 75 students. Katie, I think the numbers were something like you're at 60 or 65 now. And so, but you've got a wait list.
So Fun Club right now is at 50 kids per day.
Okay.
And that is a state license program. So those need to meet certain requirements. There's an additional 25 kids that attend in additional camps that are not state licensed and don't need to meet those square footage requirements. But we have, we do have some fairly substantial wait lists for all camps, but specifically the Fun Club. And so with the ability for future growth, going to that 75 per kids would be an adequate number, we feel at this time.
Yeah. So that's why we've sized these appropriately for that. We're also having a small kitchen here that has access to 2 of the rooms. So these could be rented out as well for, various functions that the public might want to host. We've got 2 offices on this level for staff to run the Fun Club and things like that. We've got the required restrooms on this level, as well as some storage, mechanical janitor's closets, things like that. And so the majority of the office and admin spaces will be up on the 2nd floor. So I'll just take you upstairs real quickly. So here's that stairwell that I pointed out before, where staff could quickly come in and come up this stair, walk through sort of a small vestibule type area with some lockers in it. And then also have a changing and restroom here on this level. Then we've got 5 offices on this upper level as well to house the recreation staff, and 1 office in this corner with a good view of the Nordic Center to help control and visibility of that, as well as the break room, and then just some workstations, cubicles and things like that, a central work area. And then we've also got elevator, so that there's accessible access up and down. So I think that this concept responds in a number of different ways to the comments that we heard the last time. We've got a more compact kind of footprint. It's more efficient. We got rid of some of the, extra things like balconies and like that. The exterior design, if you remember from our last presentation, it will be similar in character. We have not updated those 3Ds quite yet, but with the pitched roofs and different materials that are going to meet the design guidelines of the town and the sustainability requirements of the code as well. So I think that about does it as far as the design presentation. So I think we can open it up for questions, comments, wherever you'd like to take it.
Well, thanks very much for that. It's quite a substantial transformation. But yeah, open it up for council discussions.
First of all, thank you. It's really looking nice. I've got just a couple comments of layout stuff, and for the layout, I love this. I feel like it's a work in progress for into a cohesive land plan for the entire sort of base village, if you will. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, do you think that, what do you think? I mean, I don't have any critique
Of the bubbles.
of it. Right, I mean, together, but from a design perspective, how would you tie it all together? I mean, is it signage? Is environmental? I feel like random buildings thrown onto the PRA. And so it's those fine details that can really make a huge difference. So I love your all's perspective on that. And then kind of related, where's the arrival point and how do you tell people, okay, you're here? And where is here? Is it at the hall? Is it at the lodge? Is it, where do you see that here being that destination point? And then I just had a couple really small questions about Slopeside Hall. Are those walls movable? How they have that at the,
Yeah,
For the
um,
classrooms.
yeah, so that it could open up into one big hall?
exactly. Sorry, I
They
didn't
are
mention that.
movable? Oh,
Yes.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think this is covered with the cubicles and stuff, but I just had a note. I really like private offices. I think that's great. Maybe one or two could be a little larger, so two people could share an office, but I don't need to get into those details, but just a thought there. It looks like a good amount of diverse space and such a huge improvement, and that's great. So really I love your feedback on the layout stuff.
There you go.
I
Megan?
would love to. I think you hit on the head kind of what gets me most excited about this plan and what we can do with it. I will tell you, obviously, what you're looking at right now with Bubbles is not the final vision and plan. However, we didn't want to get too far down one path without an understanding of, is this the right program? And have we kind of at this diagram, why is that word hard for me right now? Diagrammatic level, laid this out appropriately. I do think that when we create and really work on what I'm going to call the visual vernacular of the PRA, it's going to come together. We need to not only plan the space to be flexible, so there's going to be some really fun space planning, but we need to choose the materials really carefully to speak to Frisco and to speak to what's already at the Day Lodge. The Nordic Center and the Day Lodge have really strong characters, but also really different characters. I do think that we can tie that together with the addition of the Slopeside Hall, the materials for the building, but also the materials of that space. One of the things I want to be cognitive of is that we're not putting City Plaza in between two buildings in the middle of a very green space. So when we get to the design level, I want to make sure that there is a lot of flexible space that goes between hardscape and softscape, but also usable. I want this area to be well used and to be able to host events of different sizes. So one of the things we started to look at in the final placement of Slopeside Hall versus the Day Lodge was, is there enough room that if we ever wanted to expand Slopeside Hall, we would be able to and not have the buildings feel too close together? But B, can we create and account for different tents? A lot of the events that we do now currently use the 10 by 10 tents and multiple ones. And we always have to think about fire access when we're event planning, but also weddings and other events that we might host more of that we don't currently host might host more larger tents. So we're really looking at that from a lot of different angles. I also think our final treatment of the streetscape on Recreation Way is going to add a lot of those visual cues as to how you arrived. And I'm not going to lie, I think that overall signage is incredibly important. That's not necessarily the scope right now with this building, but I think it's incredibly important to that sense of you are here. And the hard part about that is here for visitors and here for, how the Slopeside Hall, how we picture that being, yes, it will be open for events, but it's also going to be where a lot of locals go more than the Day Lodge. So we're kind of getting that a little bit figured out, and it changes by season. So there is some hard questions there with the you are here, but I think we need to make it really clear to visitors that are coming specifically for tubing in the winter, especially, that the Day Lodge is where they go. And I think a lot of that is through signage, but I think it will be also through how we treat that vehicular access, which is why we're calling it the emergency access. That's not something we're going to overly highlight necessarily. Help?
It might,
Okay.
yeah, and I might just add in that we've talked in meetings about that sense of arrival and that sense of place, and having those sort of iconic, visual destinations, like some sort of outdoor sculpture or
Mhm.
something that it's sort of that Instagram moment that, it'll be used year round, and and it will become sort of a focal point on the site. So we'd love to do something like that.
Yeah, and I'd also love to get into that pedestrian connection too. I think if we can draw visual attention to that, it will be much safer for people. So there's a lot of cues that people use almost subconsciously when you're moving through a space. So it's kind of the next, it's the fun level. It's the next one.
Yeah, go figure, I got some thoughts. So you mentioned the elevator in the day lodge.
Yes.
Are you also putting acoustics and kitchen upgrades in the project?
So I believe kitchen was discussed and we're currently looking into sound panels for next year's budget.
Okay,
So that would be a different scope of work.
but is the kitchen, making the kitchen, not as a cooking kitchen, but as a facility caterer's kitchen? Is that in the scope that we're going to have? Because I want to make sure that the project, when it's done, is done. Not that
Sure.
it's done and then the following year we have to address the other upgrades that for some reason we didn't do when we did the project.
The kitchen expansion, the elevator are not currently included in this scope. So those in the day lodge. So we have not included that with the scope of work that we're doing with Bob and his team at this point in time. Not to say we can't add it, but it's kind of, as this has evolved, right? This is what we need to do eventually to the day lodge. This is the new building we're proposing. We could add it in, so it does become one complete project.
My request would be, if you're going to talk about an elevator, talk about everything you need in that building so that we can bring it up to whatever level of functionality it needs to be a quality catering facility. And from everybody I've heard, that includes a kitchen that's functional. I've talked, honestly, I think we either need to change the name of the building or change the name of the hill. And you can do either.
Yeah.
But slopes, the only thing we're missing with the name Slopeside Building is a slope, unless we market ourselves as having a tubing slope or some way or another, making that word a part of the project. We can call it Tubers Hill. I don't know, but I still have that disconnect on lacking a slope. Did you find out the capacity of the buildings for, like, how big of a wedding can we hold in Slopeside Hall? I don't have a sense of how big these 3 rooms are.
Right. I think seating wise for banquets and things like that, you could probably seat about 100, 120.
Okay.
Probably in all 3, if you opened them up.
About the same as what we can do in the day lodge?
So currently the day lodge capacity sets at 120. If you're looking realistically at a seated event, you're looking at more of 80.
Otherwise it gets cozy. And how big are each of those rooms then, square footage?
I don't have those numbers on.
Give or
Hang on.
take.
Give me just I can get back to that drawing. I think we were shooting for about, I don't know, 6. Shoot, I need to look at the drawing. I don't want to
I'm
misquote
just
how big
kind of
they
for
are.
reference. I don't know how big
Yeah.
this room is, but I'm in looking at those 3 rooms and this room, I'm thinking this is about the size of each of the 3 rooms.
That's right. Yeah.
Am I in the right hemisphere?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Exactly.
Bob,
That's a
all
good
those that
estimate.
you provided, I think you've got one at 890, 790, and 640.
Yeah.
Sound about right?
Yep.
For each of the
That's right, yeah.
smallest one, 640, the largest one, 890.
Just confirm the pedestrian connection, that's just a crosswalk, right?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gets into what I was starting to hint at in the next level. I would love to see some kind of vertical indication for drivers to understand that it is a pedestrian connection. So more than just the crosswalk sign, which is out there, I think we can do something to enhance that and make it just a little more obvious of a crosswalk.
And then I love the community gathering space, but have concerns, one with snow removal. We can make it pretty with art and benches, but then how do we get the snow off of it in the winter? So I just hope there's conversations going on about functionality as opposed to, but in addition to design. Because again, one of the things hopefully in the budget is that space, because I don't think any of us want to come back and have the building be built, and then it's just this big concrete thing that looks like we're going to do something with it later, but who knows if we'll ever get around to it. So let's pretend like that is a true part of the project to finish when we do the building. It's 1/7 of the crew. 1/4 of tonight, 1/7 of the total.
Sure, I'll jump in. Thank you. Definitely a huge difference from what it was. I appreciate that. Like, I feel like in the process, we often talk about changes and things, and often the plan comes back pretty similar to what it was, right? And I think you guys have definitely embodied a lot of the stuff we brought up. I appreciate that. My few things was that back door with the hallway. I like the idea of the hallway or straight through the front. You can see the front of the building. I think you could easily make that back vestibule like the front vestibule, in which case the double doors and just a little bigger, a little more inviting than just a single, hotel back door kind of thing.
Mhm.
That would be an easy way to just sort of say you're going in here, and then it leads you straight down the hallway to the lobby. Not sure, is there going to be some sort of welcoming desk or anything in this area, or is that just for the day lodge? I don't know where that fell in, if that falls in.
Currently, it's just an open space is
Right.
what it is at this point in time. We don't have someone who is manning a space right now. But it's open enough and flexible enough that you could add in that space as needed.
Theoretically, they're going to the day lodge and they're getting whatever they need taken care of there.
Yeah.
This is right.
Yeah,
Just more
and
for
the
the,
thought of
the extra
having,
people in the
there's
office.
those 2 offices right there on the first level that they would have a window or something. So at least there's visual kind of control over anybody who comes in that door may be lost and need assistance. Yeah.
That's just in how this building is going to operate. Along the lines of what Andy's talking about, craft services. I think it would be great to actually provide something down there for our patrons, coffee shop or something like that. This might be a place for that. And I know that's extra on top of things, but in the similar vein of instead of building something and then saying, boy, it would have been nice to put in a coffee shop. Perhaps we could venture down that road. Maybe that would be small, and maybe it would be tied in with this kitchen that you got here or something. That I don't know. I like the classrooms with the movable walls. I think that will be a great addition. I like you pared down the whole upstairs to be, tighter version, as Andy brought up last time. Just, who are we putting up there? Cubicles will end up being some specific people's cubicles, so it is nice to have your own space, without being subjected to everyone else. And then the last thing I think was really just the getting back to the roof pitches before we end up designing something to look like an old building on site or old buildings. We should still keep a forward-thinking, modern aesthetic, and try to avoid ice dams and any of those things on the front side. Not on the front side of the building, but on the front side of designing this thing.
Right.
I would just love to see more modern architecture in everything we do. I think we're pretty stuck on, combining materials, and it looks like the 90s. Personally, that was my own personal thing. I think that's about it for me.
Okay. Great.
Cool.
One thing,
Please.
one thought that I had on that kind of backside entry we were specifically trying to keep it sort of small and unassuming so that we didn't get a lot of winter traffic of tubing patrons trying to drive
Building.
down that side and drop people off, which is, outside of the control point. So we're kind of, I don't know, it's sort of a balance that we need to make it look like an entry, but not so much like an entry that we have too many people coming in there.
Sure,
So-
and that might have to be taken care of by signage and whatnot, just as far as
Exactly,
everybody
yeah.
flowing.
And we
off the hill,
talked about
because
that, maybe,
I think they would end up there anyway.
yeah,
because
well,
gonna
and
be
that's
the
what we talked
first-
about, some,
First stop, just coming down.
yeah.
Is this where I'm supposed to be?
Yeah, we talked about some temporary barricades out there. So they
Directing
could,
people
yeah.
and that sort of thing. Sure.
and, yeah, so
Yeah. Okay,
thinking about that stuff.
that's fine. I'm not gonna like poo-poo the whole project if it comes back and change that thing. Don't worry about that. I just want to make it a better overall, thing. I don't want to, throw a wrench into the works. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think, I would echo most of the same comments. I've kind of focused a little bit or curious a little bit about process as, we were really focused on that slope side hall building uniquely in terms of its function. And as you kind of integrated that function back into the function of those three buildings in that public space, it kind of broadens the scope of the project overall in terms of what the price tag might be, because I agree with comments we've heard already is, the timetable for bringing this all up, I think probably has to be pretty complimentary. So that things at the Day Lodge can certainly support what goes on over there next door, and it all kind of happens at the same, if it happens at the same time, or if it happens sequentially, get that building up, and then we come back the next year to the Day Lodge. So understanding the total scope of the budget to get all that done and implement some of those other attributes of the public space and the signage and things like that, kind of bringing that back together from a phasing perspective to really understand, okay, how's it going to happen? Is it, 1 to 3 years? What are the expectations? I agree and kind of want to understand a little bit more about the expanded kitchen at the Day Lodge and understand what exactly it's supposed to support. I like the idea of having a cafe out there somewhere to support that Nordic operation. So people, when they're done, have a place to walk. Day Lodge seems to be the appropriate place to do that for now. It's really laid out very well for that, with the porticos, with the very comfortable, great room. And it wouldn't take too much to kind of create a better kitchen, one that's more functional in terms of delivering that kind of a menu to get it out. And that would also support caterings, typically, which don't evolve on site. Typically, those are holding stations, not creation stations, right? So, I'm just kind of curious, and how we're going to add that to the next phase, understanding how that's going to be implemented and the costs associated with that. Want to kind of really get a sense of storage wise with that elevator. What are we going to facilitate down there for storage? What that's going to look like? I know there's plenty of stuff to go down there. Just kind of want to get a sense for both levels of utilization there in that space. And then how does this affect the Nordic Center operation in terms of traffic flow to the Nordic Center? So does it displace anything and does it serve, is this that staging area for those Nordic events? Summit Nordic Ski Team, the drop room for the kids when they have those events, the little Vikings, will they come out of there and then cross the street? So how does that help, create, how does that help dissipate that bottleneck that's over there at the Nordic Center? Getting some of the staff out of there. I'd like to get a sense of that. Is it noticeably improved? Will it be just something that only the staff really can tell the difference? Or will the skiing public really kind of notice the difference? Is that something you can speak to right now, or?
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the building is designed to complement every single piece of the operation that we have out there. So you're exactly right. Those classrooms can definitely be utilized for the Little Vikings program. They can be utilized for the Summit Nordic Ski Club. It is across the street, of course, but doesn't mean it's not right there. It's just they don't have spaces. They don't have spaces to come in, to change, to keep their stuff, anything like that. So that building can easily serve in that capacity. They're also always looking for meeting spaces, places to be able to just hang out, have a group meeting, have a team meeting. That's what this new building would also be able to help with. It does alleviate some of the pressure with the staff as well, like you just said. So the Nordic and Trails manager would actually have an office in this new building as well, overseeing what's happening over at the Nordic Center also. So still the ability to quickly get over there should need be, but also then to oversee everything that is happening. So it complements everything in every way. In terms of races, we've done races on both sides of the street, right? We've hosted them and have them over at the Nordic Center entirely, where they take off and they go right from there. We've also had them over on the Tubing Hill side of things. So the options are still there to host whatever type of race we want to host or need to host. It gives us more space though for all those staging opportunities as well. In terms of I don't know, downstairs in that basement, we can store a ton of stuff. I mean, there is everything that you've got right now, right? All that, the furniture, the signage, you name it, everything is down there. So it will continue to serve as a storage space. I think that we're always looking for storage areas. And the kitchen, like you said, yes, I don't think it takes a lot necessarily with the kitchen at the Day Lodge to beef that up, but it does, as you all know, it needs some love. It just, in order to have it function more as a working cafe, it's just, you get in there and it is tight and it's awkward, and it was never designed for really what it's being used for now.
And is that, with the Tubing Hill ongoing right now, do you have F&B functions out of there whenever the Tubing Hill's open right now? So you always have something going on there already, right? Okay. So yeah, looking at that with the concessionaire's eye to do that remodel to get that stuff out. That's it for me, really just trying to kind of, get that extra number on top of the Slopeside Hall number and understanding the best phasing for how that's all going to come together in a time like that.
This also includes planning commission's input, does it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be one of our next steps. I mean, if you guys are comfortable with this, what we would do is we'd have an initial meeting with the DRC, which includes fire, which we've actually already met with, but it also includes Excel Energy and just kind of all the different disciplines that we know we're going to need input from in the building process. And then that gives us what we'd go to them with, like a schematic plan. And then from there, we'll have some time to develop what we would consider like the sketch plan submittal for planning commission and go through the planning commission process as well. So.
Have they looked at this at all at this point or no?
Not yet.
Not yet. I want to say for the record, I would like them to see it on the early side before sketch plan. So you can get input from them as our appointed panel of experts. Thank you.
Anything else? Add on. I think that's it. You guys have anything to add? Anything to follow up on? Any questions for us?
Give a kind of a projected timeline for this. Where are we going from here?
Well, I think originally we were going to try to wrap up the scope, which was an 80% construction document package and cost estimate kind of thing by September. With this kind of stepping back and redesigning, we probably push that out a month to October. So that's what I'm thinking is more like that mid to late October timeframe for 80% CDs.
And then?
And then
Is
funding
can
and
just sort of talk us through from now till the shovel goes in the ground. What has to happen? What are our decision points?
yeah. So the with that 80% package, we'll have a good idea of the funding that's required. And so then it becomes, your tasks to raise money for and identify the funds, right?
That might be a budget question then for next time.
Yeah, that'll be, this fall, you have to do that. And then I would say we can roll into the final construction documents and bid package and things like that through the end of the year. Hopefully try to meet a groundbreaking say, next spring of some kind. That'd be the earliest that
Right,
we could
okay,
probably do
good.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll see this again after. So I guess the question that's the question then. So when do we see this again? And at what stage?
So once again, we're kind of back to process, and what does
Yeah.
that process look like? I think there's probably a little confusion there. Our goal was actually, as Megan had said, take it to DRC within the next couple of weeks.
Right.
After that, take it to planning commission. After it goes to planning commission, it would come back to you.
All right, good.
Sound, we on track?
Right, all right.
Okay.
just wondered.
Okay,
And
just make sure.
would that be, when will we see the additional scope of the Day Lodge renovation in terms of the complementary use? Will that be part of that?
I think I have to get with Bob here too and get an additional kind of estimate on what
Okay.
that scope is, the cost associated with that. Because like we said, it's not part of it. It's just, we know that's what we want in there, but we have not budgeted for that piece of it. So we have to come back and talk through that.
Thanks.
Hey,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excited to come see you guys again on this one.
The next one is scheduled for about 45 minutes. Does anybody want to make a quick break before we get on to the next one? Are you ready to get rolling? Just keep rolling. Second agenda item on the work session is the childcare discussion. And we'll open that right now. I think Diane McBride, our acting town manager, will introduce the report and take it from there.
Got it. Thank you, Councilmember Fallon, council members. This is both myself and Bonnie will be tackling this one today. The last time this discussion was in front of you was in early January. So I know we're going back for a little bit here. Since that time, we have looked at a couple different governmental agencies and what they do in terms of childcare. So we did look quite a bit into the city of Aspen. Bonnie and I have had some nice conversations with them. And then we also got some updated numbers from the town of Breckenridge as well. And you'll see all that is within your packet here. There is, in terms of the support that the town of Frisco has traditionally given to Summit County Preschool is about $65,000 per year. And that is then utilized by the preschool for, it does for financial, a variety of different things that they want to do with it that they've outlined. There are about 71 children who attend Summit County Preschool from 65 families. And of those 65 families, a total of 41 of them either live or work in Frisco itself. We do have some questions in this report. We'll get to those here in just a little bit that we just are looking for some answers from you. If we need to provide more information about this, we're happy to look for more information. We want to know exactly kind of where you want to go with some of this information. There is some additional follow-up here. Early childhood options within the county itself is also continuously looking at childcare, also trying to understand the needs or the issues that we've got with wages, the turnover of staff. Of course, this all then also, falls with the housing crisis that we have as well. They are working on some surveying that they are doing. They are collecting more data and are presenting all this information to the county as well in August. So everyone is talking about childcare at this point in time. In your report, we also broke down a few more numbers from the preschool. So you see some accurate numbers in terms of what the tuition rates are, in terms of as well, how many kids are on the wait list. There are, as of February, there were 245 kids on the wait list for Summit County Preschool. Jennifer, I believe, is also on the line, the new director for Summit County Preschool, listening into this conversation. And she has indicated that that number should not be of any surprise, has actually gone up. So people are looking to try and get many of these spots. We've got information there in terms of what the turnover is, the starting salaries, what their operating budgets are, and then tuition at the preschool is anticipated, as you'll see here as well, to go up. It did go up January 1st. It will go up September 1st and again next year as well. So they are also trying to address the issue that they've got in terms of the covering all their costs and trying to figure out the true cost of childcare, and they're raising fees in accordance to make that happen. The questions that we do have for you tonight, obviously a discussion to have at this point in time. Does council desire to continue to provide financial assistance for Frisco families for childcare? We have defined that as infant through preschool care. I know a lot of times when we talk about childcare, there's programs that run for after-school programs and such, but this is very specific to that childcare for the infant all the way until preschool, until they go to kindergarten. If yes, does the council desire to keep the funding at 65,000? Would you choose to change that in some way? That can all become part of the budget discussion that we will, of course, that will lead itself into this here in a few weeks at this point in time as well. And are there other criteria you'd like to see associated with this? I think there's many questions that are out there. I don't know if the information we've provided you has helped in terms of giving you more information about some things. I know we tried to get as much information as possible to hopefully lend itself to a good discussion. And with that, I don't know, Bonnie, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I think you covered it. I'm ready for discussion. If any questions.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the deep dive into, this is a pretty good picture of what's going on. So we'll open up to you guys, whoever wants to jump in.
I got just a couple questions. So this was great. Thank you. Kind of just bringing back a lot more information to what I think is second only to housing and reasons people can't live here, and is probably the second topic behind housing to every community, every jurisdiction, every family in our community as to the problems we need to solve. This one comes in second, but it's a big second. One of the thoughts is, and it's just, this is a community topic. So I sort of sense we need to be coordinating. It's good to see what Aspen does. It's good to see what Breck does, but this is our community needs to be coordinating. I don't know if early childhood, who I don't know anything more than what I read in the paper somewhere or another. They just got $2.4 million to throw at this problem in ways that I don't know, but certainly should be part of our conversation. Strong futures, federal stimulus. There's money coming in from every direction on this problem. So I don't look at it as our conversation should be really just what is Frisco willing to spend on this problem. It's how do we solve this problem for our residents, and that's a more difficult conversation. So the collaboration among the other organizations is critical to solving this, or helping solve the problem. I don't think we'll ever solve it. Do teachers really make only $12.50 an hour? Are they really still? I mean, considering the community and what you can make Washington or any other position, are they still getting people at that?
The information that we have from Summit County Preschool still indicated that the starting salary, the basic starting salary, was still at $12.50 per hour. Correct.
Okay.
Let's fix that.
Yeah, that might be an issue.
I don't know if Jennifer is on the line. I'll check and see.
Who can you at least just conceptually? I knew who used to be there. I knew that the executive director left. I didn't know who the new person is.
Yeah, I'm seeing if she's on the, yeah, Jennifer Tarrant. Yep.
Well, I'll start with welcome. Good luck. We're here to help.
Hi there.
Yeah, just a moment. We will unmute her and she can also introduce herself here as well.
Well, then, as long as she's listening, that's, I'd love to hear from her and welcome her. But, so a big thing for me is convening a community collaboration beyond just us. I think there's a conversation to be had. I don't have an opinion on it at the moment, but are we supporting Frisco residents or Frisco employees or both? Like I said, I think that's a conversation. I don't have an answer to it, but it's a conversation. Also, open to the conversation, but I prefer the scholarship model to the grants to the school model, because we want to help the people who need the help. But if you're a full pay, if we give 65 or 100,000 to the school, that's being proportionally distributed to the full pay students and to those in need, as opposed to a scholarship system, which really just helps those who need it the most. There was something in here about it in-home, and I would hope, I don't know details, hope we can encourage in-home daycare. Because capacity is as big of an issue as affordability, if not a bigger issue, because we can give it away for free. And we still have half of our population unable to get their kids into daycare. So how do we increase capacity? And a question, is the wait list real in that, because I didn't raise my kids here, do people put their kids on 5 wait lists so that the minute that kid gets a slot at any of the preschools, that just frees up technically 5 wait list spots?
I can only speak from my experience having done this, and the answer was yes. Because you want to just, but I would turn to, we've all been there. Yeah.
So the magnitude of the wait list, we don't have to go out and do a deep dive study on it, but the magnitude of the wait list can at least be adjusted in our own minds as not quite to that level because we've got one kid on multiple lists. Okay, that's really helpful. So that's Ryan. Again, thanks. And what was her name? Jennifer.
Jennifer, yeah, I don't know if she's
I'm
on
here.
the line. We know that.
She's
but yeah.
trying to speak and we're not hearing her.
Back to
Hi there, guys. Can you hear me?
those that we're supportive of the cause.
Okay, I would concur with many of Andrew's points. I think speaking also from my own experience here in Frisco, I have always looked to the town of Breckenridge's model as very appealing because it captures such a large number of families. And from my experience, and maybe you shared in this experience, we didn't qualify for, say, low income funding, right? But we're still struggling the cost of living affects all of us. And so I really have always thought that was an admirable model, that if you're working in the town of Breckenridge, in this community, you on some level qualify. And so I think that is a worthy, so when we start talking about scholarships, there is no cutoff point where people aren't affected. I mean, if you're a surgeon or something, like, I mean, I don't know, or an entrepreneur and you just have, unlimited funds. But I think 90% of the families in Frisco are tremendously affected by this. So I feel strongly about that I do like that town of Breckenridge, the model of, okay, apply for everything else first, and then apply for town. Don't come to us first in line. Let's make sure that you're not already qualifying for the very low income subsidies, et cetera. I think that's obvious, makes obvious sense. Let's see, I may be all over the place here. The $65,000, I would love to meet Jennifer. That's always not settled well with me because I personally, I mean, looking at the tuitions, it's like pennies a year for each family. And so it doesn't make a measurable difference in the monthly lives of parents, of children. It's going to roofs, it's going to things that need to get fixed, but it didn't ever, I could never really wrap my head around or get my arms around, how is this really making a difference to our families here in Frisco? So that number I have not been a fan of. That being said, I definitely think we should continue to fund childcare and up the ante in a way that is measurable, that local families feel that impact. I think that's a great question that Andrew raised. Are we talking about Frisco residents or employees? I'm not really sure. I think that is something that, again, looking at the town of Breckenridge, I think you guys can help me clarify this, but if you work or live, I mean, I think that they both have merit, and we're so small, there's so much crossover that it makes sense to look at both. I do, though, want to stop short. I want to make, with housing, we have seen people find loopholes in our deed restrictions and find ways to move up here that don't work for local companies that are really enjoying the benefits of deed restricted housing. That maybe is not the vision that we had in mind. I think the same thing applies to childcare. I want to make sure, you know, we have a lot more people wanting to move up here. And I welcome them. I certainly want them to live in our community. But I really think that this should be targeted at people that are working locally for local companies, whatever that means. That's a tough question. I don't have an answer, but I think you all get what I'm after there. Demonstrate that locally based job that this would be supporting. I don't understand why not in-home in Breckenridge. To me, we did a split. We did in-home, we did Summit County Preschool, we also did Frisco Preschool. They all are great. If you're paying for childcare, I think you should qualify. I don't think it's our decision where you send your kid, and I don't think one is better than the other. That's just my opinion. Let's see. Back to the 65,000. You know, I know we did get details, but I would like to see a link. I would like to see how that money is supplementing teacher salaries and not going towards facilities, things that I understand.
It is.
Related at 6 1/2 dozen, but in the same way that Breckenridge has a teacher supplemental fund, I think that we owe that to our community members, to our teachers who are working so hard. And I'm almost done here. The last thing is I would like to understand how we can link this to STRs. And so if we're gonna up the funding, this is one of the things that we've talked about, the intangible costs of STRs. And because it's so expensive to live here, many people choose not to because they just can't afford the housing and the childcare, right? And the low paying job. I mean, it just is not an equation. So let's link that to STRs. When we talk about STR fees, let's wrap that all together and have some of that fee funding a childcare program.
Just to clarify, we're not talking necessarily about a tax. We're talking about the fee, or not really. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, on that note, raise the fees. Raise the fees. I mean, you know, for the fact that our fees don't even cover our own licensing program is just, it shouldn't exist at that point, right? I mean, it's bankrupt, right? So we need to raise the fees. We need to get some money out of that and put it towards, you know, affordable housing and childcare as well. You know, but also let's go to the voters. Let's get as much as we can and go to the voters. Why not? Right? They want to support this issue. They also have, you know, strong opinions about the short-term rentals, but we'll go there another time tonight. You know, the $65,000 to the preschool, and I understand because Kim gave us the whole lowdown about how the money breaks out and everything. And you know, the bottom line is why is this successful preschool so underfunded, right? What are they missing? How can we help them perhaps get some federal money or whatever? How can we help them? Because they're already not making their nut at this point, and we're just subsidizing that, right? And how is that fair as opposed to the at-home operations, right? You know, and it's one thing if it's a teacher's fund and we're giving for just teachers, and then the at-homes, you know, fall in that, and those teachers are also covered. You know, $12.50 for anything in Summit County, or that's a travesty. That's just wrong. It shouldn't, you know, that shouldn't be, right? So, you know, I'm not looking to pull the rug out from underneath the preschool, but I would say 2 budget cycles, they have to figure out how to fund their own situation from now. I would, you know, I'd give them personally, I would say, you have to make up this money. And then I would want to take that money and give it to scholarships and to teachers directly. That's how I'd like to see that. You know, I can't imagine that this preschool runs the way it does, as underfunded as it is, and is still able to get teachers. You know, I mean, because it's an issue, and it was an issue when my kid went there. My kid's 9 now, and that was a long time ago at this point, and, you know, nothing new. And then in the meantime, everybody still can't afford to send their kids there, you know, and you know, when your kid graduates and goes to kindergarten, all of a sudden you can afford more on your mortgage payment, you know, which that it all just doesn't add up. And we need some balance there. And so, you know, I think we really have to get creative beyond what we've done with other federal funds. And what else can we get? I mean, we had 1A, and I think maybe some 5A money goes to this as well. I'm not sure, not at all. But you know, where else is there money available for us to pull federally and at the state level to support preschools? You know, I think that the big thing, going back to the 65,000, it's got to be some sort of more fair approach because of the at-homes and the churches and whoever else is running a preschool at this point to support our people. You know, let's there focus on scholarships as we can. Let's up the amount of money that we're putting into pre-K learning. I don't know what that number is, Bonnie. That would be a discussion with you as far as what's reasonable, what's not reasonable. Is it a percentage of the budget for most municipalities? You know, what's normal for a typical municipality to kick into childcare? I appreciate Vail and Aspen, and you know, in looking at that, obviously their budgets are much higher than ours. So we have to take something into consideration there. You know, residents, I think all residents should be available to at least scholarships and that kind of thing, because the just people working within Frisco, you know, as say my business in particular, we have a business license. We work out of our house. Our operation is out of our house. Not that I'm trying to, but we wouldn't apply. We wouldn't, you know, be covered in any of our stimulus or anything that we've given. Not that I want to be, and I'm not going to be, and I don't want to be pulling from that. But I know there are other people working out of their houses with legitimate businesses that, you know, can't get any coverage only because of that. So I'd like that. I'd like us to take a look at that as well. I think that's about it. I think I kind of covered everything I want to do.
Good coverage.
Thank you.
You know, all good points. I would just say that as I listen to everybody talk about it, I find it odd that, and I'm glad we're having this conversation now, that that up till now, we haven't had this conversation in terms of community value, the same way that we advocate for an event like the barbecue challenge, or the way we don't have a problem with spending a couple $100,000 a year to support the historic park. And it's at least as important, at least as valuable, and certainly from an investment standpoint has much greater return, you know. So I think we need to be comfortable with those kind of numbers, without a doubt, and think of it in terms of that way. It's just, it's, you know, there's a budget placeholder for this, and it's a number, you know, for the sake of argument, start with the number $200,000, for example. But and in terms of continuing funding for that, you know, I know we have a lodging tax already, but the lodging tax fund is not dedicated to this type of activity, to this type of pursuit, just because that was the nature of the ballot language. But I think, you know, when you talk about fees versus taxes, I think, you know, Bonnie, maybe this would be helpful, is to kind of really understand, you know, what really is available from a tax strategy, because I don't think that really, if you went out in April with, you know, something directed to raise a little bit of money from a tax perspective on STRs, you know, what would that look like? What are the options to get to a number like $200,000 or $250,000? You know, what would that be? You know, what would that potential ballot language look like? And because I agree with Melissa, I think when you look at impact fees, for example, it's kind of hard to assign a real fee to this level of impact because it's really intangible. You don't really know. We haven't done any kind of work to develop that number, and it would be hard to say. But I think it's appropriate to sit there and say, well, the first thing I would suggest is raise the lodging tax. Get it to another 0.25% and have that increase dedicated solely to the problem. I think is that if we're truly, to Melissa's point, if we're going to look at the lodging tax, the impact of STRs versus say hotel rooms, you might just want to focus on that from STRs. And is that one part of a package that ultimately, from an STR licensing perspective, starts to shift people's interest in short-term rentals, and that number at which long-term rentals start to look more attractive because the upfront costs and the maintenance costs of an STR have started to accrue a little bit. So it's part of that other conversation, but I want to have a number there that goes to that and be sure, at what point does that stop just passing through? Because there's a lot of headroom still. There's a lot of room to run for a short-term rent in Summit County, and we haven't seen the top yet. So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about doing is just going to pass through to renters, which, okay, that's fine, mission accomplished, but it doesn't necessarily become a deterrent for short-term rentals if whatever your strategy is in terms of short-term rentals to create a package.
Dan, I'm sorry, you've lost me on.
Anyway, so I digress.
If we're talking about money for daycare facilities, whether we get it from
No, I get it.
anywhere.
I digress.
Let's stay with. how do we spend
I
it, not
digress,
how do we get it.
but it was just trying to make that connection. And then I was about to come back, but thank you very much for keeping me on task. But Thad, you're saying.
I don't want to get us into the weeds. I do want everybody to be aware, though, that you addressed the issue just now about an uncertainty on whether we could raise money for childcare purposes through an STR impact fee. You expressed uncertainty because you said it's intangible. We can't figure out what the dollar amount is. There are legal uncertainties beyond that. I think I could easily tell you that an impact fee on the act of engaging in a short-term rental that addressed directly the issue of affordability of housing through whatever program you like, whether you build it or you buy restrictions, whatever the case may be, that's pretty easily supported, right? That we can get a study that will fairly directly show us the impact of short-term rentals on housing values overall, and then how those values relate to affordability. To take the next step, though, and say, because housing is unaffordable, we need to subsidize childcare for people, is going to trigger a red light at the back of the court's mind. And what that red light is flashing is it's saying, this looks like a general governmental purpose. This looks like a general governmental purpose. If you are gathering money for payment of a general governmental purpose, as opposed to a program to deal with the impacts of what you're collecting the money for, the courts are going to question it as a tax. And I understand what you're saying, that I understand. You're saying there is an impact between the two. But the impact, as you related it, was housing is so expensive, people can't afford childcare. Well, by that argument, we can subsidize food too, because housing is so expensive, people can't afford food, right? I don't think a court's going to buy that argument. They're going to see a tighter relationship between the impact of STRs on housing and the program and the way you're spending money to address that housing.
Might the linkage be through employment in the town of Frisco? I mean, the
Maybe,
fact that,
maybe,
you know,
maybe, but there you just get the increment, right? Because the question there is, what is the degree to which short-term rentals increase the need for this, that, or the other type of employee over just general base requirements of society, right? That's the impact of your STR, not just the general need for employment. What need is driven by the short-term rentals, right? And our number of short-term rentals as opposed to everyone else's. That's the impact of short-term rentals, right? Because you're gathering, I hear what you're saying, but unless you carve that part out, the court's going to say, well, wait a minute, you're not, that's the impact of life in the big city and high real estate values, right? What part of that is being driven by what part is being driven by the fact that this is a great place to live and real estate's really expensive? And what part is being driven by this is a great place to live, real estate's really expensive, and the STR market is so high we need more of this sort of employee who can afford this sort of housing.
Are we getting-
Sorry,
go
can
ahead.
I just finish this
Sure.
thread here is rather than, so we talk about housing, right? So the linkage between STRs and housing is really strong, it's really clear. Presumably we could prove it in a, through an analysis of the impact fee. Might though, the link or how you actually describe it be a workforce fee? I mean, this is a workforce. I guess that's what I'm getting at is as an employee, as somebody who is working in the town of Frisco, I guess what I'm getting at is this worthy of us pursuing and exploring, or are you saying, and I guess it would seem,
I think it would be difficult under the current state of the law, analyzing fees versus taxes, to tell you that I think a court would support a program that took impact fees and used them for things that weren't fairly directly related to affordable housing. And I don't think a court will.
We're having a conversation about the money.
Well, you can
about
call it, we
raising
can
the
call it what
money.
you like, but who are you
We're
going
talking-
to, who are you going to impose the fee on for this workforce issue?
Hold on, because we're
Sorry.
talking about a budget number between 0 and 200,000, right? I mean,
not
realistic,
necessarily.
maybe 500,000.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about, I think the question that's on the table isn't how are we going to fund that money? Because
I think arose by any other name. I mean, you can
Because-
call
but-
it workforce. but if
very
you-
honestly, if we, with the budgets we have and the revenues we have and the reserves we have, we've got the money to do this
I
if
don't
we
think the-
view it as a
what I'm
thing. So I just
interested-
don't want to get the childcare conversation is confusing or complicated enough that to burden that conversation with how are we going to fund it as the first conversation?
I disagree because we've been having this conversation for as long as I've been on council
Mhm.
and many, many years before that. And we have yet to identify a sustainable revenue source for childcare. And so when we
That's just
talk
because the
about-
prioritization hasn't been there among previous budgets to put it in there, but we got the
Yeah.
money to put it in there without more revenue.
I
So
don't necessarily agree. I mean, we're talking about $65,000 right now. Even if we increase, if we're talking about increasing it to 200,000, we could come up with the money, right?
Right.
If you look at the examples that staff provided us with Breckenridge, Aspen, it's a drop in the bucket. We need to significantly raise it. And in order to significantly raise it for Frisco families, Frisco employees, I think we need to look at either a tax or a fee. And so I think, I appreciate, I don't want to get in the weeds either, but at some point we need to have these, we need to really flesh out the details. What are we talking about here? I mean, we can certainly go to our budget, cycle and say, yeah, okay, let's increase it to 75,000, of course. But that's just sticking another Band-Aid on it and pushing it down for another council to deal with, in my opinion. So I think there's some value in having this conversation.
I would respectfully suggest to you that if you run a study on nothing more than the impact of STRs on the cost of housing, right? And how, and the impact of STRs on the demand for workers at lower wages who need that housing, I think you will come up with such a large number to support a fee that it will be way beyond what would ever be politically supportable. In other words, what I'm saying is I don't think you need the study to go down the road of addressing what is the impact of this on childcare. Forget about the issue of whether a court would buy it at the end of the day. I don't think you need to get there because I think there's such a high level of need and impact from the STRs on the affordable housing issue that you're going to come up with such a huge number that you would never think to impose it on a pro rata basis on all of your, I mean, I think that will be a very large number.
Yeah. So maybe right now, for the sake of the conversation, we're gonna identify X, Y, and Z, 3, 4, 5 potential ways of funding this, and along these lines of the legality, what if our pre-K education is tied in with something like housing helps or something, if there was legalese or whatever to be able to, and that you're saying that we need to study in order to do that.
is that the way we need to get the money that we need? And if the money we're raising from 65,000 to 200,000, let's be clear, we're not just giving that to the preschool, right? We're talking about
That's
giving
the direction
them
you're looking for.
65,000, and we're raising up to 200,000 for scholarships, for teacher funding, and whatever else we identify as the areas of what we're needing to fund, right? And so, we're not going to come up with the answer today of what that's going to be as far as what tax we're going to bring to the people, or as far as what, level we're going to apply fees to whatever area, be that SDRs, be that to lodging tax, be that to on top of our sales tax. I mean, I don't know what the right answer is there, and that's going to be a Bonnie question as well, which I feel like is a work session beyond us just sitting here with the four of us, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us, right? And so I also support from that, I think we should go to the citizens, the people who are dealing with these matters, in order to be able to see how much is it that people are needing, what do they need as amount of scholarships, what do they need as far as assistance, what do they see as the ability to find funding in other places, because I think at this point, in a few weeks from now, we're going to have a few more answers than we normally had. And so we're not going to identify a new thing to where in a few weeks from now, there can easily be maybe 5, 10 new different possibilities, right? So we have to raise more money for childcare, or for pre-K childcare, right? Right now, we're throwing out $200,000 off the cuff, off the top of our head, for no reason at all, just because 65 is not enough.
It's a placeholder.
Right? It's a placeholder, right? I mean, what should that number be, right? Should
Yeah.
that number be $1 million in just providing for local?
I don't view any of us individually as having a solution. This seems like something, and in collaboration with, whether it's other towns, with the providers, the parent, this is something that needs a committee to hash it out outside of just staff time. I think this is when staff could use outside assistance, not a paid consultant, but a community group that comes together to address this issue. It's citizen involvement. Again, I think the world is going to change in early August for these types of focuses, whether it's at community outreach or opportunities for funding. But that, to me, is how this conversation should evolve, not just the 4 or 7 of us, along with a staff recommendation saying we need to spend more money. Right. Great. How are we going to spend it, whether we raise it through taxes or fees, or just grab it out of the budget because we're doing well? How's it going to be spent, to me, as a committee organization of
And how's
impact?
it gonna be administered too? I think that's a key thing.
It all is more, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to this, that when we talked with the town of, the city of Aspen, I mean, they've had their programs in place for a long time, and they have a lot of staff, a lot of time, and a lot of money committed to it, and they have a specific tax that goes to it. So there's a lot of work involved in it, and I'm glad to hear you say that you would like to explore further, rather than what we were presenting to you was, we can do that option, we can follow a pattern of someone else, or we can just give them more money and let them figure out how they're going to do the programming and the tuition programs. That's basically what our 2 possibilities of recommendations we were kind of presenting to you. Because if we do it internally, if we try to do these programs internally, we're looking at significant staff increases over the years. And I'm not sure that's really which direction you would like to go.
Right, on my part, whose bucket does this fall in,
Yeah,
right, for
yeah.
staff, right? And so are we now going to come away from this discussion with how much more for who to do? And I don't know who it is. Aspen has the housing coordinator as doing, as this is under their, we're not going to do that to our housing coordinator. That's already, we have other, things we need to take off our housing coordinator's plate. So with that, we need to identify who and how in order for what. And I fully agree, and we need community input. So I think you have direction as far as we're not looking to increase $65,000 to the preschool. We are looking to give them that $65,000 in the next budget cycle. That's what I'm hearing personally. They might not agree, and then you can go over that. Then how are we getting to this next number? You have the answer today as far as I'm understanding what the question is.
Yeah,
I
right.
think I agree with that. So to your questions, desire to provide financial assistance, yes. Increase that amount, yes. Increase by 100,000 if we can afford it. Let's evaluate that. Should Summit County
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Should Summit County Preschool administer this program? I think I would follow your recommendation on that, as Bonnie pointed out. If yes, are there criteria council would like included in such financial assistance? I think we've covered that. At least I share my thoughts. And just in my closing thought is that this is a great thing to do for the time being, but let's have that bigger conversation. Let's keep pushing this, that we can have a sustainable revenue source for childcare beyond the 165.
Yeah.
I am not willing to say just throw in another 100,000 to solve the problem unless there is a targeted process of spending it in the most appropriate way. So is it a placeholder? Like I said, it's just to say we're going to throw another 100 at it. I disagree.
So, and I would tend to agree. To me, it seems like we need to work backwards from what's our goal? Is our goal is to have every child in Frisco taken care of? Is that our community value? If that's what it is, and also to create capacity, because I think that point that you brought up earlier is really most. If we're looking at Lake Hill in 5 years, for example, those kind of things, we need to be able to help with either seed money or do something to help create more capacity for this. And there has to be a substantial amount of money on the hook for that. I think this is the kind of thing from a tax perspective, especially if there's linkage to SDRs, however that's created. And that was my point before, is that if you're going to create that nexus, you have to look at those secondary and tertiary impacts, because it's designed to have some kind of impact on housing. And that has to be part of the conversation, which is why I was bringing it up. But anyway, but I think our goals then should be clearly articulated. One, to me, is teacher retention. And, so do we do that by going to understanding the tuition hikes, for example, that Summit County Preschool are going to be incorporating here in the near future? Are those tuition hikes ostensibly to create room in their operating budget to get to $15 to $18 an hour? And I think that really is something I need to understand before we take that next step, because that should be an immediate goal. Teacher retention and the value of that to the kids who go there. My kids were lucky enough to have some of the same teachers throughout, and they still maintain relationships with those teachers today. So I think that should be identified first. And if they get to that, they give us that number and say, this is the shortfall, we start there and say, we need to at least provide that. I don't have a problem if it's going to take them 2 to 3 years of tuition increases to get there, to have a kind of a dual program. We continue to support them with those numbers as long as that's their stated goal. And we see that's happening, and at the same time start to come up with the money with that identified need to the families that need that money, and then have that applied, because both have to happen at the same time, I think. So, but those to your points about, well, what, why, I would start there. Who, how many kids, what is that number? And then work back from that. And there's going to be a nexus there again between that and the increased tuition, assumably at the preschool. We're going to know what that delta is, and there's our target to go get it. In terms of, then we can have a talk about administration. How are we going to get the money to the people that we need it? Getting money to the preschool in the short term, If it needs to be more than $65,000 in the short term, I'm on, frankly. If it goes to teacher retention and teacher salaries, whatever that compensation package is going to look like, I'm on board. I don't know how the town can participate in that compensation package as an outside entity. I'd be curious to have that conversation. If we have a pool of money outside the ability of the Summit County Preschool, for example, to administer it, how do we get that money directed to teachers as a town conduit? I don't know what that looks
Well,
like.
it's like the town of Breckenridge has, whatever they call it, the teacher supplemental income.
Does that,
thing, That's $165,000.
does that go right to, do teachers apply for that? Or does that go to the preschool as a line item for?
Preschool.
Yeah, so, but anyway,
That's
just want that question
So like
answered.
something like that, that is like,
As long as I know it's an operating, their line item of their operating budget, it says teacher salaries, or salaries and compensation, there's a number, I'll take that 100, pick a number, $100,000, I'm gonna put it right in there. And they come back and they go to their people and they go, guess what? We're all making $16 an hour now. We can have an immediate impact for the kids at the school right now. And then we can still come back and say, yeah, you're gonna be raising tuitions. It's gonna be more expensive for these people. They're not covered by these programs. They're they're the 15 percenters, or whatever that number is above the 85. So, and then now we can figure out a way to have that money available for them to come apply for whatever that program is going to look like. That's how I kind of see that laying out. But ultimately, I think we see success by linking these kind of programs to a sustainable fund. We see it with 5A. We see the lodging tax was designed to improve our recreational facilities and visitor information center, things of that nature. I think that kind of nexus on those kind of tax questions, especially if there's a linkage to SDR somehow, I don't see how you lose on that tax ask personally. Again, depending on what that number is.
I'd like to, we're kind of late in the year and, getting ready to do the 2022 budget. So I guess my question would be to you then, for this upcoming budget, I don't foresee that we have time to, do the committees and do all the studies and everything that we need to. Are you comfortable with us bringing you a number? I mean, it won't be 65,000, it would be a different number, and maybe we can justify it. What we've done in the past is we've given, the 65,000 has typically been for salaries, to supplement salaries and recruitment and retention. And then in the past, as you remember, we have done some capital projects that they've come to us and asked us for. Sometimes they've been in the middle of the year, sometimes they've been during the budget cycle when we can. So it would be my suggestion to ask you to give us a number that we can look at for this year, that we can give them. And then also, I would like to see the preschool give us their 5-year capital plan. We have a 5-year capital plan, and then we can determine even this year what we could supplement them for next year for capital projects. That would kind of be the way I'd like to see it go for this year. We just don't really have enough time to complete an entire program, and certainly not to go to the voters.
well, and
For
that's
this year.
why I would be comfortable with, like, we're just totally throwing numbers, pulling them out of thin air, but at the same time, $100,000 does not go very far when you're talking about childcare. So I would look to you, Bonnie, to give us a recommendation as to what can we afford that, is a tangible difference. I mean, it's not going to change the
Well,
world, but
Yeah, let us maybe spend some time with Jennifer. I have not met her yet.
Yes.
And maybe kind of see where they're headed right now and see what would fill their needs for this next year. And then certainly going forward in future years, or maybe even do a budget amendment if we are soon enough and we have a more accurate number of what it's going to take to fund a childcare program.
That's the missing piece right now, because normally it should be right here. It should be weighing in on that part, because I want to know what her operating budget looks like with the starting hourly of $18 an hour. Because to me, I start dishwashers at $18 an hour. So it's ludicrous that we're not in that $18 to $25 an hour range for people we entrust our kids' welfare to. And then that's that piece that we start with. How do we get them there right away to make an impact immediately? And then the funding can follow. I think we have the money, to Andrew's point, to some degree, we have the money to seed this and get it going. And then we have time to evolve it, either whether it's a tax strategy or if it's a combined strategy with some other, that we're gonna dovetail with some other strategy to, to leverage some other way. We have time to do that. But I don't want to hold that piece up while we try and figure out the policy piece. That's kind of
Definitely really interested in their 5-year plan and, to see where they're getting their money from beyond tuition hikes. Because tuition hikes does not answer their problem. Tuition hikes is part of the problem, I mean,
on
and
paper.
and it's like,
But it doesn't
well,
solve our problem,
well, sure,
of-
but that,
of
does yeah, that
creating
doesn't,
access. and
creating
more
access, it doesn't solve any of that problem,
I agree.
right? And yeah, $18 an hour, we start interns at in our business. And I have entrusted my kid with these people who have been great, and they are really underappreciated and really underpaid.
Is that, so.
I think we got this.
Yeah, it's a complicated conversation. I know we covered, we wandered a little bit, but,
It's good.
all right, awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for taking this on. And we can probably talk a little bit more from the committee perspective, if that's something we want to follow up the next time we bring this together. Probably. All right, moving on to work session agenda item number 3. We're going to open that work session right now. 619 Granite Street Workforce Housing Project Design Development Update from our Don Ryan. Thank you, Don. And Eva and
Can you speak, Chris?
Hi there, can you guys hear me? I'm not sure how this is working virtually here, but
Can you try again, Chris?
yes, can you hear me or see me? Hello, can you see me?
5-minute break just so we can see if we can get Chris's audio going.
I'm good with the 5 minutes.
yeah, sure. that's all right.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
You did a good job with what was the one you had to do the one time? Yeah, EV charging station.
Do you want me to keep
To all of our
talking?
participants on the outside, I'm going to be turning off Zoom and
Yes.
restarting it.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
You copied me.
I know you can hear me.
I ran my eyes over it very quickly. Yes.
Yeah, this is all I
They
can
were,
come up with.
yeah, as best I could tell, they were all reasonable. I think my response to him.
You didn't respond.
You're just using.